Today we're going to be taking a hopefully brief look at the X100F. Yes, F stands for fourth. Can you believe? When I reviewed the T, I didn't realise it stood for third, and actually, come to think of it, when I owned the S, I didn't realise it stood for second. Probably best I get on with it before I have any more revelations. I'm going to be taking a look at what's good, what's not so good, if it's worth getting it if you already have the T, the S, or the 100. Or should you get it instead of an X Pro 2 23mm? I'll throw up the usual sample straight out of the camera and you guys will speak about it below. Let us know what you think. First, the build quality is very nice. You'll find it's a little bit heavier than the previous models, but that's likely down to the fact that you've got a new battery in there. There are a number of differences physically, but nothing that's that wild. This is merely an upgrade, but with some big features. This is probably, for me, the biggest upgrade in the X100 range so far. You've got the usual eye sensor there. You've got your view modes, that's nice and easy to use. If you're into back button focusing, that's a bit awkward now. That's moved, well, what you would use has moved across. You've got this dial here, which is also a button. The screen has been shifted across. You've now got the lever, or as most of us call it, the joystick. This now is more in line with the X Pro 2, so if you just want to pick it up and go, you're in the same sort of range. D-pad with the menu, quick button all the way over there. Some aren't big fans, not a big deal to me. Looking at the top, you now have the ISO dial in between the shutter speed dial. For some, that's a big deal. The on-off is now under the grip a little bit, for want of a better phrase, so you're not necessarily going to be knocking that on and off so easy, pulling it out of the bag. Function button there, your exposure compensator dial. Now I do like that C because that gives you a ±5, and if you program, for example, this, you can then use that to control it. So along here you'll see I've got the exposure compensator, so by turning that I can then do it that way. That's a new thing. You've got the dial on the front, which you can press as well, so that's great to use as a function, perhaps in the way I just did or not. You've got the same 23mm f2 lens. I'll have a quick look at the autofocus on that in just a moment. On this side, your manual, continuous and single, and on this side you've got my least favourite anyway, 2.5 jack, mini HDMI and your USB. USB charging is a very good idea, so I'm glad that's with this model too. And overall it's the same look. I personally get a black one, but that's just me. This does look cool and it feels nice and solid. That's nice for switching straight away, and it does stop instead of going all round. The autofocus is adequate. You can see it moves around decently. This lever means you can pop it straight back into the middle. You can, of course, make the focus point the size that you want it, and you can move it around. I like to have the full spectrum available to me, but obviously it's stronger in the center. Some of you might just still carry on with recompose, but that's a nice little feature right there. And I say little feature, that's something that I think will really help swing it for some of you. You can see it flicks around decently and has no problem. It also features 8 frames per second, of course not with a simulation bracket, and well, for all intents and purposes it works decently. I didn't use it that much, but you know, it's there if you need it. One of those things that I just thought was a bit of a fad, but I wanted to check out in this case, was a digital conversion. Now if you make sure you're in single, or still I should say, I like to shoot in film bracket and it didn't work in that. Then by just turning the focus ring, obviously when you're in autofocus, see, you can go through the range. You can have the wider and you can have the digital, and the word is that doesn't just crop into the image on the sensor, it does a bit of magic so you don't lose too much resolution. Not convinced myself. I gave it a bash, and well, it's a nice little feature. Not as exciting as I was hoping. Bit closer to the cropping in that I expected. The internet does like to say the magic's there. Depends on your subject, depends on your lighting condition. You could get it to work. Maybe you'll drop the exposure a bit, get a bit more contrast into it. I'm glad it's there, but I prefer the adapters. Yes, they cost money. Yes, it's a bit more to carry around, but that's just my preference. Now for the most part you won't be using this for video, but you can throw it into video mode with the drive on the back there, and then you can start and stop your video with the shutter release, which is much better than some other bodies which you have to use a function button there and sometimes really press down hard on it to get it to actually stop. This is just a lot easier. It doesn't have image stabilization, which for me doesn't really help, but for some of you out there you'll be fine, or you'll just use it resting on a table, tripod, whatever. It's cool for B-roll footage, and I'll throw up some footage. Again, it's not amazing, but it's straight out the camera, so there's potential there. 1080p, no 4K. But this is about the magic of photography more than anything. The X100F, the camera view, it's cool around the streets, it looks good, it's a decent upgrade, it functions well, the images are rich, the colour is potent, the contrast is good, the shadows are nice. You can be flexible with that if you use the JPEGs, or of course RAW, even more potential there. The dynamic range is decent. I'm not going to talk about the value for money because Brexit has kind of ruined that here in the UK, and Fujifilm themselves are saying that that's really kind of messed them up a little bit here, at least in the UK. Maybe that's what's affected stocks, I don't know. You might enjoy that ISO dial on the top. That's not a big deal for me. The additional wheel on the front, that helps me really use the extra stops on the exposure compensator. I do like that. I like the uniformity on the back. That joystick lever, actually, that surprised me. I didn't think I would fall in love with that quite as much. I thought I preferred the touch screen on the XT20 for getting the focus points, and that still edges it for me, but that joystick is really good. Sorry, lever. Do apologise, Fujifilm. It's a nice camera, but, well, as we said, if you were into shooting up close, macro style, wide open, forget it. This is too soft. Maybe that's the magic that Fujifilm were going for portraits, which aren't so close up. But for me, that's a bit of a fail with this lens. Might not be a big deal to you, as it's only a tiny percentage of what I shoot. Then that's not a big deal to me. I would still own this if I had the extra money after buying certain other cameras that Fujifilm have got. For example, should you get it if you've got the T? If you can get a good deal on it, if you can sell your T for a decent price, or if you just made the money and you can upgrade everything, then go for it. I didn't realise, but it's been 3 years since the T came out, so that's at least a decent period of time for a company to wait. And hopefully you got your value for money out of the T. Do like this thing. Not sure if I'm blown away anymore though. Maybe we're getting greedy now. Maybe if you want your weather resistance and you want a bit more flexibility, then the X Pro 2 is for you. If not, if you've got a simpler way of shooting, this could do it. In a similar way to Leicas, and I'm not a big Leica expert by any means, but this does still have a beautiful feel to it. When you use the images, it's great to hold, even though it doesn't have much of a grip. It's a fun little camera, and I think that's what Fuji are selling you. Great quality images with style, with flair. It's not always clean, it's not always precise, it's not scientific, and frankly I think that's what photography should be about. Although you're free to have your own style. I mean, look at music, there's all sorts of styles out there and there's all sorts of audiences, but to me Fujifilm still have the magic, and this is a big upgrade from the first two bodies. And yeah, from the T, it's a good upgrade. You know, no two ways about it. Get your hands on it. Let us know what you think below. If you went from the T to this, let us know if you're happy with that decision. If you're not sure, let us know. Sorry, it would be remiss of me to not mention a couple of things properly. That function button I've programmed, customized, whatever word you want to use, to be my ND filter. That's a nice feature. I think I could do it being a bit more powerful, or maybe the next level would be a couple of grades to that, so you've got a choice of ND filter. But that's very, very handy little thing indeed. With that change to the more powerful battery, in this case you've got the W126S. If you're using a Pro 2, T2, or even the T1 Pro 1 with the non-S version, all your batteries are now uniform. That could be a nice little handy thing for you, especially as a lot of you guys out there are using those batteries in your other bodies. If you're upgrading, it could be a pain in the neck having to swap over batteries, but you know, the new processor requires that battery, so it's a trade for the quality that you're getting. If there's anything I've forgotten, like the low light performance, let us know what you think. Personally, I find it very, very good in low light. You know, that's why it's not a pixel peeping review. But they're good things to know, I guess. Of course.